Before we begin, let us know where you're listening from. After the story, rate it from 1 to 10. Now, let's start. The icy winds of Northumbria howled like wolves against the modest thatch roof of Wynn cottage. The Saxon winter had set in with vengeance, blanketing the small farming settlement in snow and isolation. Wynn's fingers, red and chapped from the cold, worked methodically as she ground herbs in her small wooden mortar. Her knowledge of healing plants, passed down from her grandmother, had made her both valued and feared among her people. "Wynn! Come quickly!" Her younger brother burst through the door, bringing with him a gust of frigid air. "Vikings on the shore. 3 longships." Wynn's heart stammered in her chest. 3 years had passed since the last raid, when flames had devoured half their village and taken her father. Her mother had died shortly after from grief and sickness, leaving Wynn to care for her brother alone. "Gather what you can carry," she instructed, already reaching for her medicine pouch. "We'll flee to the forest caves until," the thunderous pounding of footsteps silenced her words. Too late. The door splintered open, and towering figures filled the threshold. Their bearded faces, weathered by sea and sun, displayed no mercy. Gold and silver adorned their arms, spoils from previous raids. At their center stood a man whose presence commanded the room, broad-shouldered and golden-haired, with eyes the color of a summer storm. "This one." He pointed directly at Wynn. "She comes with us." His Norse accent cut through his broken Saxon words, but his meaning was unmistakable. 2 warriors stepped forward, seizing Wynn by the arms. "No," her brother cried, lunging forward only to be struck down. "Leave him," Wynn pleaded as they dragged her away. "He's just a boy." The leader regarded her with cold eyes. "You are the healer. The village speaks of your skill with herbs and potions." Wynn stared back defiantly. "And why would that matter to you, Viking?" His lips curved into what might have been a smile on another man, but on him, it only heightened the danger. "Because our Jarl's son lies dying, and you will save him." Thus began Wynn journey across the churning winter sea, torn from her homeland and thrust into the heart of her enemy's world. The longship cut through the frigid waters with grace that belied its size. Wynn huddled beneath a wool cloak given to her by one of the younger warriors, a small mercy in an otherwise merciless situation. She had learned the leader's name was Quentin son, known among his people as Quentin the Swift for his unmatched speed in battle. His father, Jarl Eirik son, ruled a substantial settlement on a fjord-carved coast of what Wynn knew as the Norse lands. And the Jarl's son, Quentin's younger brother, was dying. "What ails him?" Wynn asked on their 3rd day at sea, breaking her self-imposed silence. Quentin studied her with those stormy eyes. "He wastes away. Food turns to poison in his stomach. His skin grows yellow. The pain leaves him screaming through the night." Wynn recognized the symptoms. "And your healers? Your wise women have tried and failed." The admission seemed to pain him. "Our seer claims a foreign hand brought this sickness. So a foreign hand must heal it. Or you simply need better healers," Wynn muttered. A dangerous flash crossed Quentin's face. "My brother is heir to our land since I rejected the title. If he dies, blood feuds will tear our people apart. Save him, Saxon, and you'll be returned to your home with riches. Fail, and your brother will never see you again." The remainder of the voyage passed in bitter silence and biting cold. Raven's Fjord rose before them 7 days later, a collection of wooden structures nestled between mountains and sea. Smoke from hearth fires created a haze above the settlement, and Wynn could see people moving about their daily tasks despite the winter chill. Under different circumstances, she might have found beauty in the rugged landscape. Warriors lined the shore to welcome the returning ships, but their cheers died when they saw the Saxon woman being escorted from the vessel. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "They bring a thrall." "No, a healer. For the young heir. A Saxon witch." Quentin's hand closed around Wynn's upper arm, not painfully but firmly enough to prevent escape. "Keep your eyes down," he advised in a low voice. "My people have little love for Saxons. As Saxons have little love for those who burn their villages and steal their women, she replied coldly. Something resembling respect flickered across his face. Perhaps you'll find we are not the monsters your people paint us to be. Perhaps you'll find I care little for what you are, beyond being my captors. The great hall dominated the center of the settlement, a massive wooden structure adorned with intricate carvings of gods and beasts. Inside, fires burned in long pits down the center, filling the space with warmth and smoke. Warriors and shield maidens feasted at long tables, while servants hurried between them with pitchers of mead and platters of food. At the far end sat an older man whose resemblance to Quentin was unmistakable, the same strong jaw and proud bearing, though his hair had turned to silver and deep lines marked his face. Jarl Eirik Zephyrson's eyes narrowed as his eldest son approached with the Saxon woman. "Father," Quentin greeted with a respectful nod. "I have brought what you requested. A healer from the Saxon lands." The Jarl studied Wynn with open skepticism. "This slip of a girl? You believe she can succeed where our own healers have failed?" "Her reputation reaches beyond her village," Quentin replied. "They say she has knowledge of plants even our wise women do not possess. Then she will prove her worth, or join the thralls in the fields." The Jarl waved a hand dismissively. "Take her to Halfdan. If my son dies, so does she." Wynn was led through the hall and up a narrow stairway to a small chamber. The stench of sickness hit her before she even entered, the sour smell of sweat and bile, of a body fighting against itself. On a bed piled with furs lay a young man no older than 20 summers. His skin had the yellowish tinge Quentin had described, and his body appeared wasted despite his youth. A woman, presumably a Norse healer, dabbed his forehead with a damp cloth. "Leave us," Quentin commanded, and the woman departed with a suspicious glance at Wynn. Wynn approached the bed cautiously, years of training taking over despite her fear. She placed her palm on the young man's forehead, feeling the unnatural heat radiating from his skin. "How long has he been this way?" "Nearly a month," Quentin replied, watching her closely. It began with stomach pains after a feast celebrating his betrothal. Wynn's hands moved methodically, checking the young man's pulse, examining his eyes, pressing gently on his abdomen. Halfdan moaned in pain at her touch. "His liver is swollen," she observed. "Has he been vomiting?" "Yes. And the pain comes in waves." She lifted one of Halfdan's eyelids. His eyes show the yellow deeper now. "This is no natural sickness." Quentin stiffened. "What do you mean?" Wynn straightened, meeting his gaze directly. "Your brother has been poisoned. Slowly, over time. That is why your healers could not cure him, they treated a disease, not a toxin." "Poisoned?" Quentin's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "You are certain?" "As certain as I can be without knowing the exact poison used." She glanced around the room. "I need to see what herbs your healers have been giving him. And I need to know who prepares his food, his mead. You accuse someone in this hall of treachery." Quentin's hand moved instinctively to the axe at his belt. "I accuse nothing. I simply state what I observe." Wynn held her ground. "Your brother is dying from poison, not illness. If you wish me to save him, I need to know what he has consumed and who had access to it." For a long moment, Quentin said nothing, his eyes boring into hers as if searching for deceit. Finally, he nodded. "You will have what you need. But remember, Saxon, your life depends on his." Over the next 3 days, Wynn worked tirelessly. She examined everything Halfdan had consumed, questioned the thralls who served him, and tested various remedies to flush the poison from his system. The Norse healers watched her with suspicion, but under Quentin's command, they provided the herbs and tools she requested. On the 4th night, as Wynn prepared a cleansing tea for Halfdan, the door to the chamber opened. She expected Quentin, who had taken to checking on his brother's progress several times daily, but instead found a striking shield maiden with fiery red hair and cold eyes. "So you are the Saxon witch," the woman said, her Norse accent thick. Wynn continued her work without looking up. "I am a healer, not a witch. I am Sigrid, daughter of Evil the Red. The shield maiden circled Wynn slowly. Halfdan's betrothed. Wynn's hands paused momentarily. You're to marry the heir. I was to marry the heir, Sigrid corrected. Now I may be betrothed to a corpse. There was something in her tone that made Wynn glance up sharply. Not grief, but calculation. How fortunate that Quentin found a healer with such skill, Sigrid continued. Though some wonder why a Saxon would try so hard to save a Norse prince. Because my life depends on his, Wynn replied simply. Sigrid smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. As do many others. Remember that, Saxon. After Sigrid departed, Wynn completed the medicinal tea and brought it to Halfdan's bedside. As she helped him drink, her mind worked furiously. Halfdan had fallen ill after his betrothal feast. His intended bride showed no grief at his condition. And if Halfdan died? Who becomes heir if your brother dies? Wynn asked Quentin later that evening as they stood watching Halfdan's fitful sleep. I do, he replied grimly. Though I renounced my claim years ago. Why would you refuse to be heir? A shadow crossed his face. I have seen what power does to men. I prefer the freedom of the sea to the chains of leadership. And if both you and Halfdan were gone? Quentin's eyes narrowed. Our cousin, Bjorn Ironhand, would have the strongest claim. He is Sigrid's brother by marriage. Understanding dawned on his face. You suspect Sigrid. I suspect anyone who benefits from Halfdan's death, Wynn replied carefully. Particularly those who had access to his food and drink. Quentin paced the small chamber. Sigrid is the daughter of a powerful Jarl. The alliance with her family has kept peace in these lands for years. Then perhaps someone wishes to break that peace. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. A young thrall entered, trembling visibly. Lord Quentin, the Jarl requests your presence in the Great Hall. Quentin turned to Wynn. Continue your work. I will return. After his departure, Wynn examined Halfdan more closely. The yellow tinge in his skin had begun to fade slightly, and his breathing seemed less labored. The remedies were working, but too slowly. She needed to discover the specific poison to create a proper antidote. A soft sound from the doorway made her turn. A young woman stood there, not a shield maiden but a kitchen thrall, judging by her simple clothing and the flour dusting her hands. I heard you seek the one who poisons the young lord, the thrall whispered, glancing nervously down the hallway. Wynn motioned her inside and closed the door. What do you know? I work in the kitchens. Lady Sigrid often brings special herbs for Lord Halfdan's meals. She claims they are for his strength and vigor, but... The girl hesitated. But you suspect otherwise, Wynn finished. The thrall nodded. She keeps them in a small box with strange markings. I saw her add them to his mead the night of the betrothal feast. Can you bring me these herbs? Fear flashed across the girl's face. Lady Sigrid would have me killed. And if Halfdan dies, many more may follow, Wynn countered. Help me, and I promise you will have protection. After the thrall departed, Wynn continued working with renewed urgency. If Sigrid was indeed the poisoner, she would not take kindly to a Saxon healer interfering with her plans. That night, as Wynn dozed in a chair beside Halfdan's bed, the door creaked open. The kitchen thrall slipped inside, a small wooden box clutched in her trembling hands. I took it while she bathed, the girl whispered, passing the box to Wynn. Please, you must not tell anyone I brought this. Wynn opened the box carefully. Inside lay a collection of dried herbs, including one she recognized immediately, a rare plant that grew only in certain parts of Northumbria, known for its ability to cause a slow, wasting death when administered regularly. You've done well, Wynn assured the thrall. Now go, before you're missed. With the poison identified, Wynn worked through the night preparing a proper antidote. By dawn, Halfdan's fever had broken, and color began returning to his face. Quentin found her asleep at his brother's bedside, her head resting on the edge of the fur-covered bed. For a moment, he simply watched her, this Saxon woman with the courage to stand among her enemies and the skill to save his brother where others had failed. "Wynn," he said softly, touching her shoulder. She woke instantly, years of living under threat having taught her to sleep lightly. "Halfdan is improving," Quentin finished, gesturing to his brother's peaceful sleep. "You've done what our healers could not." "Not yet," Wynn replied, straightening. "The poison must be completely purged from his system. And the poisoner must be stopped." Quentin's expression hardened. "You have proof?" Wordlessly, Wynn handed him the box and explained what the kitchen thrall had told her. "These markings," Quentin said, examining the box. "They are from Sigrid's homeland. And this herb you speak of is rare but deadly. It causes exactly the symptoms your brother has suffered." A muscle twitched in Quentin's jaw. "Sigrid will stand trial before the Thing, our assembly of free men. But it must be done carefully. Her father's forces would destroy us if we accuse her without proper evidence." "The evidence is there," Wynn assured him. "The poison in the box, the testimony of the kitchen thrall, and Halfdan's recovery once the poisoning stopped." Quentin nodded grimly. "Tonight, we will act. Until then, stay with my brother. Do not leave this room, and accept food and drink only from me." After he departed, Wynn continued administering the antidote to Halfdan, who grew stronger with each passing hour. By midday, he was able to sit up and take broth. "You're the Saxon healer," he said, his voice weak but clear. "My brother spoke of you." "Rest your strength," Wynn advised. "You're not fully healed yet. They say you saved my life." Halfdan studied her with curiosity. Why would a Saxon help her enemy? Wynn busied herself with mixing herbs. "I was given little choice. Yet you could have let me die. It would have been simple enough." She looked up, meeting his gaze. "I am a healer. Enemy or not, I do not choose who lives or dies." A faint smile touched Halfdan's lips. "My brother was right about you." Before Wynn could ask what he meant, the door burst open. Sigrid stood there, her face contorted with fury, a small dagger clutched in her hand. "You meddling Saxon witch," she snarled, advancing into the room. "You've ruined everything." Wynn stepped between Sigrid and the bed, though she had no weapon to defend herself. "Your plot has failed, Sigrid. Halfdan lives, and your poison has been discovered." "Then I'll finish what the poison began." Sigrid lunged forward, dagger aimed at Halfdan. Wynn grabbed a heavy pottery bowl from the bedside table and swung it hard, connecting with Sigrid's wrist. The dagger clattered to the floor, but Sigrid tackled Wynn, both women crashing to the ground. Despite her slender build, the shield maiden was incredibly strong, her hands closing around Wynn's throat. "I'll kill you first," Sigrid hissed, "then finish the air." Spots danced before Wynn's eyes as she struggled for breath. Her hand scrabbled desperately across the floor, fingers closing around the fallen dagger. With the last of her strength, she brought the hilt down hard against Sigrid's temple. The shield maiden slumped forward, unconscious. Gasping for air, Wynn pushed Sigrid's weight off her body and staggered to her feet. Halfdan had managed to rise from his bed and was leaning heavily against the wall. "Guards," he called weakly, his voice barely carrying. "Guards!" Footsteps thundered up the stairs, and Quentin burst into the room, warriors at his back. He took in the scene with a single glance, Sigrid unconscious on the floor, the dagger nearby, Wynn's reddened throat, and his brother barely standing. "She tried to kill them both," Quentin growled. "Take her to the holding pit. She will face the Thing tomorrow." As the warriors dragged Sigrid away, Quentin helped his brother back to bed, then turned to Wynn. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his fingers gently touching the bruises forming on her neck. "I'll live," she replied hoarsely. "Though I imagine you're reconsidering bringing a Saxon healer to your home." To her surprise, a smile tugged at Quentin's lips. "On the contrary. It seems bringing you here was the wisest decision I've made." The next day, with Halfdan well enough to attend, the Thing assembled in the Great Hall. Jarl Eirik presided over the gathering, with free men from throughout the settlement forming a circle around Sigrid, who stood proudly despite her bonds. Sigrid, daughter of Ivar the Red, you stand accused of attempting to poison Halfdan Eiríksson, heir to Ravensfjord, the Jarl announced, his voice echoing through the silent hall. How do you answer these charges? I deny nothing, Sigrid replied defiantly. The weakling is unfit to rule. My brother by marriage, Bjorn Ironhand, should be heir, a true warrior who would lead our people to glory instead of peace. Murmurs rippled through the assembly at her brazen admission. And what of your attack on the Saxon healer? Quentin demanded, standing beside his father. Sigrid's eyes flashed with hatred as she looked at Wynn. She interfered where she did not belong. A Saxon has no place among Norse matters. Yet this Saxon saved my son's life when our own healers failed, Jarl Eirik replied coldly. The god sent her to us through my eldest son's wisdom. The Jarl rose to his feet, towering over the assembly. Sigrid, daughter of Ivar, for the crime of attempted murder against the heir of Ravensfjord, I sentence you to death. My father will bring fire and sword to your lands. Sigrid shouted as warriors seized her arms. Your father has already been informed of your treachery, Quentin stated. A ship was dispatched at first light with evidence of your poisoning. Ivar the Red values honor above all, even his own daughter. As Sigrid was led away to meet her fate, Jarl Eirik turned to Wynn. Saxon healer, you have earned the gratitude of Ravensfjord. Name your reward, and if it is within my power, it shall be yours. Wynn straightened, conscious of every eye in the hall upon her. I ask only to be returned to my home and brother, with assurance that your raiders will leave our village in peace. A ripple of surprise passed through the assembly. Most thralls or captives would have asked for gold, freedom, or land, not merely to return to a humble Saxon existence. Before the Jarl could respond, Quentin stepped forward. Father, I wish to speak. Jarl Eirik nodded permission. Wynn Whittle has proven herself not only skilled but courageous, Quentin announced, his voice carrying throughout the hall. She stood against a shield maiden to protect our heir. She used her knowledge to uncover treachery where we saw only illness. He turned to face Wynn directly. Such qualities are rare and valuable. I would not see them simply return to a distant shore. Wynn's heart quickened. What are you saying? I am saying, Wynn Whittle, that Ravensfjord needs a healer of your skill. That my people would benefit from your knowledge. His grey eyes held hers steadily. And that I would have you stay not as a thrall or guest, but as my wife. Gasps and murmurs erupted throughout the hall. A Saxon as wife to the Jarl's son? It was unprecedented. You barely know me, Wynn protested, finding her voice despite her shock. I know enough, Quentin replied. I have watched you work tirelessly to save my brother. I have seen your courage and your compassion. What better qualities could a man seek in a wife? And what of my brother? My home. Your brother would be welcomed here as family. As for your home. Quentin glanced around the great hall. This could be your home, if you choose it. Jarl Eirik raised his hand for silence. My son speaks boldly, but not without wisdom. A union between Norse and Saxon could bring understanding where there has been only hatred. He looked at Wynn. The choice is yours, healer. Return to your lands, or forge a new path here. Wynn's mind raced. To return to her village meant returning to suspicion and hardship, forever fearful of the next raid. Yet to stay meant embracing the very people she had been raised to fear. And then there was Quentin himself, the Viking who had stolen her from her home, yet respected her skills and protected her from harm. A man whose eyes reflected both the storm and the calm that followed. If I stay, she said slowly, there must be conditions. My brother must be brought here safely. Your raids on Saxon villages must cease. And I must be free to practice my healing arts as I see fit, not just for Norse folk but for any who need aid. A smile spread across Quentin's face. All this and more shall be yours. Then I accept, Wynn declared, her voice stronger than she felt. Not out of fear or obligation, but because perhaps it is time for new beginnings between our peoples. the hall erupted in cheers and pounding of tables. Quentin crossed to Wynn and took her hands in his. "You will not regret this choice," he promised quietly, for her ears alone. "I may have taken you from your home as a healer, but you will rule here as my queen." 3 months later, as spring began to soften the frozen landscape of Raven's Fjord, Wynn stood beside Quentin before the assembled people. Her brother, now thriving among the Norse children and learning their ways, watched proudly from the front row. Halfdan, fully recovered and with a new respect for his Saxon sister-to-be, stood as witness to their union. Jarl Eirik presided over the ceremony, binding their hands with a cord woven with both Norse runes and Saxon patterns, a symbol of their joining cultures. From this day forward, the Jarl proclaimed, "Let it be known that the blood of Saxon and Norse flows together in friendship rather than battle. Let this union heal old wounds as Wynn Whittle healed my son." As Quentin's lips met hers to seal their marriage vows, Wynn knew that sometimes healing required more than herbs and poultices. Sometimes it required courage to bridge ancient divides and forge new paths, even when those paths led to the most unexpected destinations. In the years that followed, the peasant girl who had saved a Viking heir from poison became known throughout the Norse lands not just as Quentin's queen, but as a wise woman whose healing knowledge transcended cultural boundaries. And when Jarl Eirik eventually passed to Valhalla, it was Quentin and Wynn who led their people into an era of unprecedented peace with the Saxon lands, proving that love, indeed, could conquer even the most entrenched hatreds.